this is a big deal.
Trump just got some terrible news in Georgia. The same district that felt Marjorie Taylor Greene was the best person to represent them have forced a runoff, with Democrat Sean Harris gaining more votes than the Trump-endorsed candidate for her seat.
NBC News is now characterizing and is projecting that this race will go to a runoff, that both Sean Harris, Democratic candidate, Clay Fuller, Republican candidate, will secure the top 2 spots. No one else can get up into that one of those top 2 spots. And these 2 candidates will advance to the April runoff. So again, that's NBC News's official characterization based on all the stuff that me and Adam have been working through right here. And again, they're not making any characterization about first, second place here, right?
Not place, just that Harris and Fuller will be the advancers.
They're just saying these will be your top 2, and no characterization on who will finish first or second. But again, absolutely possible here. In fact, if you just based on the vote trend that Adam has been sharing there, I think very good chance here that Sean Harris can finish in first place here.
I mean, no wonder Trump's out here snapping at reporters.
Very well with Rwanda and with Congo, and we hope they're going to get along.
Sir, in Arizona, why did the FBI seize election records in that state?
Well, they probably thought the election was rigged, right?
It wasn't rigged, though.
Oh, really? How do you know?
Your own Attorney General in 2020 said that there was not measurable voter fraud to change the outcome of the election.
Think it was rigged? I think it was rigged.
There's no evidence. Sir, where's the evidence of that?
It wasn't rigged. You're a rotten reporter.
Where's the evidence of that?
Special election in Georgia this week delivered a result that should have Republicans and especially Donald Trump paying close attention. In the race to replace former Representative Marjorie Taylor Greene, Democrat Sean Harris finished first in the initial round of voting, forcing a runoff against Republican Clay Fuller, a candidate endorsed by Donald Trump. Now, to reiterate, this isn't just any district, right? Georgia's 14th congressional district is one of the most conservative districts in the country. And Trump-backed candidates normally win there comfortably, even when they're out here talking about Jewish space lasers. Yet Harris led the first round with about 37% of the vote in a district Republicans normally dominate.
Very conservative district, but that's part of his message.
Charlie, former President Biden won your state in 2020. Again, talking statewide, Trump swung it back in 2024, but we've seen Democrats make gains in other GOP districts this year. What are you doing to ensure that your party can achieve lasting power in the state of Georgia?
Well, you mentioned before, back the same night the Virginia governor's race and New Jersey governor's race happened, we won the 2 first non-federal statewide wins in 20 years, electing 2 Democrats to the PSC. And then after that, we followed that up with flipping a Trump plus 12 state house district. So we've got the momentum here because we are building through organizing, a direct spin. We're taking an argument to the people of Georgia that, frankly, they ain't got to put up with this. And here in our state, Republicans have been in charge for 23 years. The American dream is less attainable now than it was 23 years ago when they took power. That's the message we're bringing to voters. And frankly, Anna, they don't need us to tell them that. They know it because they experience it in their own lives. And that's why when we have elections here, they're coming out to vote against Trump and vote against this Republican leadership because they're sick of it.
And even if Republicans ultimately hold the seat, right, the fact that Democrats are competitive in a district like this is politically significant. Why? It fits a pattern that we are seeing emerging across the country. Earlier this year, a special election in Texas delivered a result that stunned political observers. A Democrat flipped a seat that Donald Trump had carried comfortably in the previous presidential election. When Democrats begin winning elections in places that strongly supported Trump, analysts start asking a simple question, as they should. Is something shifting in the political environment here?
Democrats in New Hampshire also added to the party's string of special election wins last night. Democrat Bobby Boodham defeated Republican Dale Fincher to flip a state legislative seat in a district that Trump carried by 9 points in 2024. The Democratic Legislative Campaign Committee says nationally, Democrats have flipped 28 seats in red and battleground territory Justin Trump's election.
When it starts to happen multiple times in different states, different districts, and different political environments, it starts to look like a pattern is forming. One, even the right-wing echo chambers can't help but point out.
This is a big deal. This was a Trump-endorsed candidate in a deep red district. He should have been able to close the deal, surpass that 50% threshold. In fact, Clay Furl just had a visit from President Donald Trump last month, and now these two candidates will head into a runoff April 7th. You'll have those who will argue that it was too crowded on the right and that Fuller will now have the consolidation of all of those votes. But we sat down with Democratic candidate Sean Harris, a former Brigadier Army General. He's running on the issues. He's running on a grassroots campaign. He's going door to door. Like so many states, there's been redistricting here in Georgia. So there are some voters in West Cobb that didn't know they were in his district. He's running on the fact that lots of people are facing forever chemicals in their water. And he also said, listen, I'm a supporter of concealed carry, so the Republicans can't run on old talking points. Here he is.
It's all wrapped around the economy. It's wrapped around affordability. I know Donald Trump don't like that word, but the reality of it is people that are not rich are working 2 and 3 jobs trying to make ends meet, and they still don't meet.
Looking at Texas, though, I mean, that should scare Republicans. That was the point that Ron DeSantis made in a post. You know, that seat, that state Senate seat, flipped. It was a district that the president won by 17 points, and the Republican had outspent the Democrat there 20-1. And still, you know, the Democrat took that seat. Ron DeSantis wrote, special elections are quirky, not necessarily projectable regarding a general election. That said, a swing of this magnitude is not something that can be dismissed. Republicans should be clear-eyed about the political environment heading into the midterms.
The thing is, when you look at the broader national polling numbers, right, they help explain why this pattern might be emerging. Recent polling shows that Trump's approval is dire. It's underwater nationally, roughly 41% approval compared to around 56% of disapproval. And the problem is even worse among key voter groups. Independents. Some polling shows Trump's support with independents in the deep negative. I mean, that kind of political environment often shows up first in special elections, where energized voters on one side can produce unexpected results, which is exactly what Democrats appear to be doing.
Two top voter getters emerge from a crowded field, according to the Associated Press. Democrat Sean Harris and Republican Clay Fuller will face each other in April.
My chances are outstanding. To be honest with you, we knew tonight that we were going to probably go into a runoff with this many people in it. We also knew that we was going to win tonight. That is very significant. A Democrat actually won tonight, and we're going to go in on April 7th. We're going to win again.
And Fuller and Harris head to the runoff on April 7th. The winner will serve the rest of Green's term. That ends in January. If they want to run for the full 2-year term, Democrats and Republicans would have to run again in the primaries in May. Harris and Fuller have qualified for those primaries. They could face a party runoff in June and then the general elections in November.
There is another factor that may explain this, right? Deeply conservative districts are showing signs of movement, even in areas that Marjorie Taylor Greene won in, because for years, Trump built his political identity around the idea that he is America first. A message that, strongly resonated in places like Northwest Georgia. But critics inside and outside the Republican Party now argue that Trump's agenda looks increasingly different from the populist message that he once championed.
Thinking about how worried are you that a split Republican Party will only mean losses in the midterm elections? How are you expecting the midterms to play out? And if you do lose the majority, doesn't that put the GOP behind the 8 ball in terms of getting anything done in terms of your priorities?
I don't think a split party is the problem. I think high oil prices will be a problem. I think the 2026 elections already, we are behind the 8 ball as far as the electoral process. I think if you add in high gas prices, high oil prices, and if we are still bombing Iran with kinetic action, people don't want to call it war, but if there's still kinetic action that causes oil to be over $100, I think you're going to see a disastrous election.
Wow. All right, Senator, we'll be watching your work, certainly. Thanks very much.
Instead of focusing on domestic priorities, this administration is now trying to even more foreign conflicts, rising energy prices, and economic uncertainty.
President Trump just posted this on Truth Social, saying short-term oil prices, which will drop rapidly when the destruction of the Iran nuclear threat is over, is a very small price to pay for USA and world safety and peace. Only fools would think differently. Today, a gallon of gas is costing Americans $3.47. A week ago, it was about $2.99.
Voters who swallowed the snake oil, believing that the billionaire former reality TV star who has enriched himself to the tune of hundreds of billions more since getting back in office was America first, but that shift can start to feel like betrayal.
Right now, I'm very disappointed in the way this first year is going.
What's disappointing?
I think there's been a lot of focus lost on the goals of what this country could be and should be, and there's a lot of division.
It's very scary to think about stepping into this new era of, conflict with Iran. But I think in mind, keeping with your votes, it's voting for someone who's going to protect us little people down here, the teachers and the community workers.
Along Iran's southern coast, the Strait of Hormuz is at a virtual standstill due to the threat of attacks. That has led to a nearly 50-cent surge in U.S. gas prices in just the past week. And drivers are starting to take notice.
It was quite a bit higher than what I was expecting. It's crazy high.
Between my husband's truck and my car, we're well over $300 a month in gas.
At work, I make around like $18 an hour, and that's not even a full tank. It's like 2 hours at work is one tank. All of my money has been going to gas.
Today was kind of a big sticker shock.
It's getting tougher and tougher to live.
And for Donald Trump, the message from these special elections is becoming harder to ignore. If the same voters who once sent Marjorie Taylor Greene to Congress are now willing to consider a Democrat in that district, it suggests that something deeper may be shifting here. When the Speaker of the House is out here admitting that Republicans need to adjust their political messaging regarding immigration, deeming it a hiccup, you know that something isn't right, and they're running scared. According to the Washington Post, the White House advised top Republican officials to avoid discussing mass deportations ahead of the midterm elections, backing away from public discussion of what was a central campaign pledge from President Trump.
Love this video? Support independent media and unlock exclusive content, ad-free videos, and custom emojis by becoming a paid member of our YouTube channel today. You can also gift memberships to others. Let's keep growing together.